I'm sorry, guys, but anyway.
We're learning. We're inside Pro Dyno for another edition of the Mustang Corral. Today we've got our 2009 Mustang GT, and we're going to be putting a new exhaust system on her. Paul, what parts are we using today?
We're installing Kooks long tube headers and a high-flow H-pipe with high-flow catalytic converters.
Now, boys and girls, this is not something that you want to try at home. Why is that, Paul?
You need a lot of room to work around underneath the car whenever you do this, so it's not something I recommend doing on your garage floor.
All right, let's get to it.
Okay, the first thing you need to do is disconnect the battery so you don't short out the computer. Then remove the battery holder so that you have more room to get to where the manifolds are. Next, take the bolt out of the dipstick holder and take the dipstick out completely. You're going to want to unplug and take out all the electronics that are on the shock tower. They're going to be in the way when you try to get the headers in. Next, take all the bolts out of the top of the exhaust manifolds. They'll be a lot easier to reach from up here. Next, unbolt the steering column. This will have to be taken completely out of the way in order to get the exhaust manifolds out and the new headers in. Next, take the bolt out of the motor mounts because they'll have to be taken completely out to reach the manifolds. You'll have to completely remove the starter in order to get the exhaust manifolds out and the new headers in. Next, you'll have to remove the two bolts from the manifold to the engine pipes. We'll be replacing these pipes with an X-pipe and high-flow cats. Unbolt all the old O2 sensors. There are two different types, one with blue wires and one with green wires.
These are the actual oxygen sensors and identified by the green plug. And these are the actual after-cat catalytic monitors that are identified by the blue plug.
And we're going to reuse these once we get the new system in.
Now it's time to take all the rest of the bolts out of the old exhaust manifolds. Be careful not to have it drop out of the car onto you. Next, remove the studs that hold in the old exhaust manifolds. You'll be replacing these with bolts given to you with the Kooks headers. Next, place the exhaust gaskets in place. Put in the bottom bolts a few turns just to hold them in place. As you can see, the new Kooks headers have a lot less room to work with. Be very careful not to damage the bottom bolts that are holding in the gaskets. Try to sneak your hands up and put the bolts in and snug them down. Make sure to put the upper and the lower bolts in place before you start tightening any of them down. Now it's time to put back in the motor mounts. This is going to be a lot trickier than taking them out.
Now that we've got the headers in on both sides, we're going to reattach the starter. And we've already put the engine ground back in. Then we're going to bring the car down. We'll put the bolts in the top, bring it back up again. Then we'll be ready to do the H-pipe. Now don't forget to reinstall the steering shaft. The last step now is to reconnect our original O2 sensors to the new headers, and then we'll be ready to bring the car back down. Now that we've got the car lowered, we're going to go ahead and tighten the upper header bolts. Now that we've got all the upper bolts in, the motor mounts are back on, and we've reattached the battery, it's time to raise the car back up. We're going to get the dipstick back in place, and then we're going to put the H-pipes on.
It's easier to assemble the H-pipe and the cats on the ground and then feed them in. You're going to need a second person to help you with this part of the install. Reattach the old exhaust system to the new exhaust system. Don't forget to tighten everything down good before you let the car down.
Now we're going to reinstall the rear O2 sensors, also known as the cat monitors.
Before letting the car down, make sure everything is tight and level.
Now that we've installed our brand new Kooks headers, H-pipe, and high-flow cats, time to put her on the dyno and see how much horsepower we've gained.